Once again, it's on your arm with the Black Comic Lords, and it is 2024, and this is our first interview in our Black Comic Creator interview series for this new year, and we got a banger for you. A vet in the game, Mr. Shawn Martinbrough. Look, this is one to be excited of. He's got a number of projects coming up with DC Comics. Shout out to DC Comics. Thank you for the opportunity to do this interview. And I'm not going to sit here and belabor the point. Without further ado, Mr. Shawn Martinbrough.
Oh, thanks for having me, Paul. It's an honor to be the first guest of the year. I appreciate you.
You are the very first, sir. Thank you very much for being here with us.
Yes, and please bear with me, everyone, as I'm fighting a cold. So I'll be constantly.
That's all right. Tis the season, right? Tis the season. So look, you have a number of projects that are coming up. Now, first of all, we all know about the DC Power project. So let's bring that up just as a intro here. DC has an all-star cast of books coming out within the next couple weeks. You have a story in here as well. A story involving a character we haven't seen in some time. Can you give us some background on this character?
So back during the summer of 2020, we're in 2024 now. Okay, so in 2023, DC Comics editor Marquise Draper reached out and said, "Hey, Shawn, listen, we're putting together the 2024 DC Power anthology book, and we think it would be really great if you can write a story featuring Crispus Allen."
Now, who's Crispus Allen for those who are unfamiliar?
Okay, so to the civilians out there, Detective Crispus Allen is a Black detective that I co-created during my time on Detective Comics. Back way back in 2000, I was the regular artist for Detective Comics for DC Comics. And I did a run that was written by the great Greg Rucka. And Greg Rucka and I created a number of characters. And one of the characters we co-created was Detective Crispus Allen, an African-American detective, really great, fun character. He went on to appear in, what was that? It was the DC with the Gotham. Was it Gotham Central? Was that the name of the book? I forget. I'm kind of.
Gotham's GCPD, I think it was.
Yeah, it was basically like the NYPD Blue book of Gotham. And so, so Crispus Allen's gone through a number of changes. And one of the things that I didn't know about was that he became the Spectre. And the Spectre is a classic DC Comics character. And I was like, wow, that's really interesting. So when Marquise asked me to write a Crispus Allen story, I said, okay, he thought that would be really great for me to come back to the character that I co-created 20-something years ago and to do something for him for the new Power anthology. So I was like, okay, that's an interesting challenge and that's kind of cool. And so then he told me that Crispus had become the Spectre, and the Spectre is this supernatural, all-powerful being who goes around and vanquishes evil. And I said, okay, let me think about how to sort of come up with an interesting idea. And at the time, I was finishing up. I have another project called Red Hood the Hill, which is going to be starting in February. And I've been working with Sanford Green and artist Tony Akins on that. And Tony and I were kind of finishing up the finishing touches on that series. And I said, hey, it'd be great if Tony can come on board and illustrate this 10-page story featuring Crispus Allen. And so
we're going to get it more into your other story as well.
Mhm.
I pulled up this panel, which I think is like the first page of that story. I don't want to do any spoilers on this because
Mhm.
I know this is the anthology series. It's not like there's a lot of pages for each
Yeah.
story.
Mhm.
But what I found interesting was the intro of this. He's talking to it's basically a therapist.
Mhm.
Um, and I thought that was a really cool literary device because it gives you an opportunity to sort of review what's happened to him in the past and sort of bring you up to speed as to where he is today. Can you tell us about was that kind of your take on it?
Yeah, you got it, Paul. I mean, when you're doing a 10-page story, space is a premium.
Yeah.
And so for me, I like to cram as many ideas in the story as possible. And I thought that was a great way to sort of just jump right into where Crispus is at this period of time and set up what the conflict's going to be for this particular story.
I also love the fact that if you look and you squint at Crispus Allen, he kind of looks like me. I know that
Y-
we never met before today, but that's what I'm telling my kid. Daddy's in the
Look,
comic book.
you know, we can go with that, Paul. We can go with that.
I mean, whatever fits, man. Whatever fits. All right. So, you touched upon this. You had a story that's also coming up, Red Hood. But
Mhm.
just to give people a little perspective on your background and history, you're not just a writer, you're a writer and an artist.
Mhm.
One of the first works I recall ever seeing you on was a book that we've talked about in our space. And I'm kicking myself because I couldn't find it in the myriad of books that I have lying around my comic book room here.
Mhm.
But it's this one right here. Let me pull this up. Batman the Hill,
Mhm. Yes.
written by one of the GOATs, one of my favorite writers, Mr. Christopher Priest. And you were the artist on this book. Is that correct?
Yep. Way back in 1999.
Is it that far back? Wow.
I think it was that. I think it was either 1999 or 1998, but definitely that one of those 2 years.
This book's over 25 years old.
Mhm.
Can you tell us what this story is about? Because it was a very unique story for a Batman story, particularly at that time period.
Yeah, at the time, I think Christopher Priest had pitched like a 10-part maxi series, and at the very last minute, he got his legs cut out from under him, and they said, "You know what? Let's cut this down to a 40-page story."
Yeah.
Which I can't even imagine how brutal that would be for a writer to deal with. But he actually did an amazing job of sort of boiling it down to like the bare essence of what the story was. And it basically is about this neglected area of Gotham, neighborhood of Gotham called the Hill, where it's so rough, so dangerous. No one goes there, not even Batman goes there. And the residents are like, they've never even heard of Batman. And so when a criminal an instance of crime happens that brings Batman to the Hill, he realizes, wow, like these people don't even respect me. They don't even fear me here. And so I just thought it was a really interesting commentary on inner city life, neglected neighborhoods, and I thought that Christopher Priest was just really brilliant in what he was touching on that story. And so for me, that was like the first time I drew Batman, and it was a great segue. And from that led to me being invited to work on Detective Comics as the regular artist.
What's interesting about this particular story, Batman the Hill, is I mean, Gotham's already a messed up city,
Mm,
right? I mean, it's Gotham. We're
mhm,
not talking about Metropolis where it's all sunshines and rainbows and shiny buildings. We're talking about gritty, urban, crime-ridden Gotham.
mhm.
The Hill is like the armpit of Gotham, right? I mean, it's the more crime-ridden of the crime-ridden city, but it's also where a lot of the marginalized and underprivileged people of Gotham live.
Mm.
Um, I believe, and it's been a while since I've read this. I mean, I believe there was almost a scene where Batman, when he shows up on the scene, everyone's like unimpressed because they're
Totally.
like, "You don't ever come out here, man." They're like, "Who are you?" Like, "All right, you're Batman, whatever,"
Yeah.
you know. And this is a guy who's used to striking fear into people, and they're like, it's another day on the hill, man. Um, and what's interesting, and the reason I bring this up because you have this other book coming up, these other two books, the Red Hood stories,
Mhm.
and as it turns out, Jason Todd is from the Hill, right? That's where his childhood was, if I'm not mistaken. And what's interesting with Jason Todd in comparison to the other Robins, I mean, Dick Grayson, we know his background is he grew up in the circus. And Tim Drake, his parents came from money. I mean, his family came from money as well. And even Damien, he grew up kind of in luxury, although he was being raised to be an assassin and thereabouts. But of those Robins, Jason Todd is the one that came from the areas that he can most identify Batman attacks, you know, the underbelly of the society. So he's got a more unique background than many of the other Robins. And I thought it was interesting to delve more into his background, because for all of his purposes, the first time we see Jason Todd is when he's stealing the hubcaps off of the Batmobile, you know. But beyond that, we don't know a whole lot about his background. So having your story was kind of interesting. And let's talk about what that story was. We have Red Hood and the Outlaws. I believe this is during the Rebirth era, if I'm not mistaken. Number 51. So what can you tell us about this book? Because this is the sort of the prelude to what you've got upcoming. Is it not?
Yeah. So basically, sort of going back to the Hill, the idea of the Hill is that the Hill was a neglected area, but like in so many neglected areas in any major city, there's an underlying beauty that was once there. And I think that one of the things I did when I was working on the original Hill back in 1999 or 1998 is that I wanted to create the Hill itself as a character of the story. And so I went about designing it to make it look unique and have a character and a feel. And I was influenced by like a lot of Baroque architecture. Like I think it was maybe East African, North African architecture. And what I did also was create like this huge freeway overpass that literally walls off that section from the rest of Gotham City. And in the center of the Hill was a cemetery. Which was just a metaphor for what life was like in the Hill. So interesting. So when I got the chance to sort of go back to the Hill 20 something years later with Red Hood 51, which is what you're showing right now, you're basically, I was like, okay, well, what would happen to any rough neighborhood in any major metropolitan city? It would probably be gentrified, because this is all prime real estate. And so I was like, okay. And also, I had it that Jason spent time in the Hill. He didn't spend all of his time growing up in the Hill. But I established with this story that there was a certain time that he spent time in the Hill. And he also did what a lot of people who have some extra cash do. They buy property at dirt cheap prices and just sort of sit on it. And so he bought a brownstone way back with some cash for like nothing. And whenever he was out, away from the Hill or doing things with Batman or working with the Outlaws, his childhood friend Dana Harlow would keep tabs on his place. And so for this story, when he's sort of like, he's left the Outlaws, he's sort of distanced himself from Batman. He wants to sort of get away from it all to a certain degree. He goes back to where he owns this brownstone in the Hill. And that's how we get reintroduced to the Hill and his friend Dana Harlow, who has been, watching over his brownstone. And that's the setup for this Red Hood story. I always describe this two-part Red Hood story as being structured like a Western, which is a classic Western. The structure is usually the good guy rides into town on his horse, and he's usually caught in the middle of a war between two factions, and he gets pulled into a conflict there. And that's really what happens when Jason comes back to the Hill. After all this time, he gets pulled into a conflict between the local vigilantes that are protecting the Hill and a rising criminal element that's based in the Hill.
So let's talk about that, because you mentioned Dana Harlow, who was the woman we saw on the cover there. But Dana has another persona, another name.
Yeah.
And let's show that here. In the following issue, you get a more prominent view of that on the cover. Tell us what we're seeing here.
Okay, so I wanted to give Jason a new set of characters to interact with, and also and these supporting characters would give us a would allow us to see a different side of Jason. And so I created these two twin sisters, Dana and Denise Harlow. Dana is a small business owner. She owns a diner in the Hill. And by day, she's a small business owner. And by night, she is a vigilante named Strike. And she actually patrols the Hill with other vigilantes that are from the Hill that are literally trying to sort of keep the bad element out, or whatever elements in the Hill are at bay. And so Strike is her alter ego. And
And
so,
she's part of the larger vigilante group that you're talking about, right?
yes, so Dana has her own crew called the Watch, and they basically came into existence due to the events of Joker War. And for all of the fans know Joker War was this huge sort of like purge event that plagued Gotham. Violence was running amok, a lot of destruction and stealing and all that stuff. And so the way, when I had the chance to create the story, I was like, okay, well, if you're living in a neighborhood in a major metropolitan city and you see all of this violence breaking out, you're probably going to try to circle the wagons and protect what's yours. And so the people of the Hill banded together and sort of basically got together to sort of keep the Hill safe from the aspects of Joker War. And that's where Dana and her crew basically came together, the Watch. But there's also an element, because you can say, well, wait a minute, well, how can regular people defend themselves against, like a bunch of marauders, a bunch of biker gangs, or, people who have like extra sets of skills. And there is I allude to that. I suggest in this first two-part story that there was a person that was training these people to defend themselves. And that gets explored in this new 6-part series, who that actually was and how that happened.
And I don't want to give a spoiler on that. But yes, there's a person who ends up training these vigilantes. Do any of these vigilantes have any powers beyond the training at this point?
No, these are all regular people. So no one's firing force blasts or ice blasts out of their eyes. These are just people with really good, exceptional fighting skills. And it's like, how could you or I be trained in a way that would give us these exceptional fighting skills in a very fast manner? And that's what the story is.
Jamila C has a question for you. She says, how many members are in the Watch?
Hey, Jamila. Well, there are a number of people in the Watch, but we're focusing for this story on about, I think, four of them, 4 or 5 members of the Watch for this story.
And what's interesting is you look at her outfit. Let me first ask you this. You're an artist as well as a writer. Did you have any input as to the look of her outfit?
Yeah. Actually, when Tony Akins, and Tony's the artist of this first story, he's the penciler, and we had Stefano Guardiano was the inker. So we had so much that we were creating for this 2-part story that I literally sort of pitched in and helped and did sort of concept, some character designs for Tony. So I did a quick sketch of Dana as Strike, and then Tony went in, and Tony is so specific with details that he literally took my quick little sketch and then made it look really real, so that you could see the folds, the nuts and the bolts of her like helmet. And then when Dan Mora did the covers, he just took it up to another level. So yeah, so I basically did the initial designs for Dana with Tony. The Watch, I did quick sketches for them, and I did sketches for a number of the characters that we introduced in this 2-part story.
Because the reason I asked that is the Watch, it's not like Batman's crew, which have this virtually unlimited budget of gadgets from Wayne Tech that they can draw upon. I mean, these are self-created vigilantes. But it kind of brings an interesting point for those that are that are fans of Batman and are familiar with the Batman mythos. One of the things Bruce Wayne always says is, I do this because I want to inspire people to take over for me. It's not about me. It's about people wanting to take ownership of Gotham, to fight back against crime. And in sort of a way, these people are sort of the embodiment of what Batman's goal is to get people to stand up for themselves and fight up against crime.
Yep.
So I thought that was kind of cool.
Yep. And like you noticed, you mentioned their costumes are something that you and I could put together
Right.
from what's in our closet,
Right.
so
Frustrated Fans has a question for you. He says, were you concerned about fans feeling like this book was kind of like a Great White Hope story for the Hood?
not at all. Not at all. I mean, this two-part story that's completely not how this is structured. And actually, the original story where Batman went to the Hill for the first time was the complete opposite of that.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Batman was not greeted
There was
well.
no respect for Batman in that story. And in this story, what is that Jason's actually getting up to speed on what's going on in the Hill and what's going on between these two different factions. And also he's sort of like seeing his friend acting as a vigilante. And then now Jason's sort of in the Batman role where Jason's the sort of elder statesman when it comes to being a vigilante. He's like, listen, you know what? You might want to slow down and think this through because this kind of lifestyle comes with a cost, and so you might want to kind of be a little bit more, self-reflective, in your actions, which is actually a change for Jason because Jason's usually the impulsive one,
Is there a different villain in this upcoming story than there was in the previous one?
The previous villain was there were two villains in this two-part story that's going to be re-released as the Zero issue. You have Tommy Max, who was like a white hip-hop fashion kind of guy, kind of like a hype beast collector kind of character. But the real villain was Demetrius Corley Jr., who is the son of our original villain from the original Hill in 1990 that came out in 1999. This six-part story, Demetrius Corley is the villain for that, and we really see his rise and how devious and how hardcore his scheming is in terms of like what his goals are for greater Gotham.
Is this the character you're talking about here?
Yeah, that's Tommy Max, and Demetrius Corley is the brother who's pulling down his shades there, and Tommy Max is the guy on the top, right.
All right. And for those of you who are asking, Red Hood the Hill comes out on issue 0, which is a reprint of Red Hood and the Outlaws 51 and 52. Comes out February 6, 2024, because the original Red Hood and the Outlaws 51 and 52 came out in 2016.
Yep.
Oh,
wait,
no, wait, sorry, that's the wrong date.
Okay, so issues 51 and 52, which originally came out in 2021, will be recollected in a special book that's called Red Hood the Hill 0. That drops February 6th. Yeah, and then the 6-part sequel starts immediately after that, and that debuts on February 13th.
Right.
Yeah. And that's illustrated by Sanford Green and Tony Higgins.
And that's what I wanted to show right here. Just a little teaser to the fans as to what they can expect to see. Here's Strike. Art by Sanford Green, which everyone who's in Black Comic Lords knows Sanford Green, Bitterroot fame. I'm excited about this. I can't even show you anymore because anything I'd show you would be a spoiler, which I really don't want to do.
Yeah.
But I'm terribly excited about this.
You're really lucky to get Sanford. Sanford is an extremely busy man. I think when he was working on this, he was splitting his time between Bitterroots, designing characters for Across the Spider-Verse, the movie, and I think Nike promotions, rap album covers. He was just doing it all. So we were lucky to get him for as much as we did for this story.
Can you, I appreciate you being here. One of the things that we have at Black Comic Lords, we have a lot of creators and upcoming creators in our space. And you're a veteran in this game. Can you give people an idea of how you got started?
Well, I got started way back when I got my first professional job in comics in 1993, and I was still a junior in art school. So I got my degree in illustration at the School of Visual Arts, which is based in New York City. And at the time, there was no internet. This is pre-internet. So the way you got a job working in comics is that you would either mail photocopies of your work into the offices of Marvel or DC, or you would go to a convention and wait on a line to see an editor and show them your portfolio. And that's
Mm.
where I met Marcus McLaurin, which is, he was like the I think maybe the only black editor that I know of that was at Marvel Comics. He gave me his card and he started hiring me, and I started working doing painted work for Marvel's Epic line. And that was in 1993, and that was while I was still a junior in college. And so I just continuously kept working for Marvel, and then I started working for Milestone, working with the late great John Paul Leon on Static. And then I went back to DC. Then I went to DC and started doing work for DC and drawing for DC. And then I started drawing Batman. And then, throughout my career, I just worked with a lot of great publishers, a lot of great writers, on a lot of great projects, from Black Panther to Batman to Hellboy, working with Robert Kirkman, Thief of Thieves, and it's just what you find is when you're a freelance artist, you have to constantly keep not reinventing yourself, but you have to constantly diversify yourself because you have to constantly keep yourself busy. That's how you pay your bills. You know what I mean? And I think that it was always a plan for me to become a writer as well, because there were always stories that I wanted to tell. And fortunately, throughout my career, I've worked with some top writers in the industry. So it was almost like getting a free writing course where I would see how these writers would structure out a script, how they would pace these scripts. And as the artist, like, that's my job, is to work with them to visualize. So I mean, like, so storytelling is just in my blood. And so now it's really fun to be able to sort of to write characters and, figure out a character arc and not have to draw it all out.
And one of the things you mentioned was being a freelance artist and writer. Is that a method or route that you would recommend for getting into the business to sort of diversify yourself?
Let me tell you something. It is extremely hard for people to get in as writers. All right. Because number one, everyone thinks they can write. Everyone, their grandmother thinks they can write. Everyone thinks that because they have an idea, they can write. And it amazes me how few people will actually pick up a book and study the craft of writing. And listen, it's one thing to be like, okay, cool, I have a feeling, I have inspiration to write, but this is an art form. This is something that people study how to write. And, for me, and so it's amazing as an artist, people go to school to study how to draw, so, and the thing is, when you're showing your work as an artist just to an editor, they can tell if you can draw, whether or not you can draw in 2 seconds. It's a very quick thing. But to have someone assess your abilities to write, they have to take time to read what you've written. And that's why that's why there's no time for people to read unpublished authors. There's no time for people to read your stuff because there's not that many hours in the day.
Right.
And so for me, so getting in as an artist first and then becoming a writer, was easier for me to do because I already had the relationships built up. And then what I did was I would write up a pitch and I would pitch my story idea to someone. They liked the way my writing read. And then I got writing work. I mean, DC came to me and said, "Hey, Shawn, listen, we have a 2-part Red Hood story that we'd love for you to write and draw. Are you interested?" And I said, "Well, hey, I'm busy writing and drawing my own create your own thing for Abrams, but I'm interested. I can maybe write something for you." And they said, "Sure." And that's how I started writing for DC Comics. But I think that for anybody that has aspirations to write, you have to take this seriously because there are 50 million people out there that want to write just like you. And so what makes you good? What makes you special? Are you showing your work to people that can honestly evaluate and critique your writing? You know what I mean? Like the competition for writing is just so ridiculous. And nothing is impossible. But if you want to do anything that's worth having, it's worth studying and practicing and taking seriously as an art form. And so
being willing to take constructive criticism as well.
Oh my God. I mean, if you can't take constructive criticism I guess as a creator and, period, then this is not the thing for you. Do it as a hobby. Do it for yourself. And I always say, whenever I give lectures to students at art schools or universities or what have you, if you really want to do this, don't show your work to your family and your friends because they love you and they don't want to hurt your feelings.
Right.
Show it to someone who is a professional, who does not care, and they will say, yeah, this is not working, this is not good. And that's what you need to do. And you need to study whatever field you want to get into. If you want to write comic books, if you want to write for Marvel and DC Comics, you have to read Marvel and DC Comics. You have to say, okay, well, what are they looking for? What are the types of writing that they want? You know what I mean? And you have to do your research. I find that too many people that want to get into this industry don't do research. They just sit back at home and think they got it all figured out because they have a couple of friends on social media, and they get into little bubbles and they kind of think they know about how the industry works. So I'm like, you got no idea how this industry works. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
One of the people in the chat is trying to get your attention by giving us a $3 super chat. Thank you, Frustrated Fan Show.
Okay.
And for that, you just roll with it, Shawn. Just roll.
Okay. I don't know.
Donation. It's a donation. I thought it was the trash. Don't be hitting on me.
Thank you.
As I said, just roll with it.
That's a classic. That's a classic movie. So that's a classic.
So he wanted to get our attention because he has a question for you. As a long-term artist, when a writer gives you more direction in their script, is that welcomed, or would you rather have just a scripted novel and you come up with your own art?
All right, let me try to figure out what that means. Would you rather have just a script in novel format? And I guess you meant to say format, and you come up with your own art. As long-term artists, when a writer gives you more direction, is that welcome? Here's the thing. As an artist, I like having a full script. And a full script means dialogue and direction in terms of panel, what you're envisioning. Now, no artist likes it when they're working with a writer that overwrites. Sometimes you encounter that where you have a writer that comes from maybe like television, and they think that this is like an Aaron Sorkin film and they can just do all this back and forth dialogue, but there's no room for the art with that. You know what I mean? I like a great artist understands that comic books are a visual medium. The artwork is telling at least 75% of the story, so you don't have to write as much. But so I like getting a full script where I see a description of what's happening, dialogue, because I look at dialogue when I draw. When I draw, this is like my art table is right here. I have my artboard and I have my script right here, and I'm looking at the dialogue that the writer has written when I'm drawing the characters, so I can actually get my characters to emote what's being said. So I don't understand artists that don't even that work without scripts, because then it's kind of weird. So for me, I prefer direction, so I can know where you're coming from. I don't overwrite it, but I like seeing exactly what the writer is intending, because my job is to illustrate and visualize what you wrote. Yeah. I hope that answers.
You also have a question from Jamila C. Do you have a favorite character, or is there a favorite storyline you've created?
Hey, Jamila, you know what? I do not have a favorite character. Each story that I work on is like its own challenge. And so if I'm drawing Hellboy, it's really cool drawing Hellboy right there. If I'm drawing a character from, let's say, Thief of Thieves, that's what I'm into right then. Like right now, like I'm working on a very big project for Dark Horse, and I'm really enjoying drawing all of these different characters for that story. So each project is its own reward. So I don't have like one particular favorite.
Well, that was my final question for you. What other upcoming projects do you have coming up that the fans need to be out looking for?
Well, the Batman, the Red Hood and the Hill is a big one. So that when that drops from DC, I'm going to be promoting that. Like I said,
is that a continuing series? Is that a limited? Do you know?
It's limited. It's going to be 6 parts.
6 parts.
Okay. So it starts in February, but it's going to wrap up. It's going to keep going up until I think June. So I'm excited about that. Like I said, I have a very big project that's unannounced from Dark Horse that I'm very excited about. And so when that drops, that will be very excited. I also have a creator-owned series for Image that has not been announced yet, but we are going to be announcing that soon. I'm writing that and working with an amazingly talented artist on that project. I also have a creator-owned project that is coming out from Abrams Books that I've been taking a minute on, but hopefully it'll be well worth the wait, that I'm illustrating and writing for John Jennings imprint, Megascope. And that's basically, it's like a black and white Sin City contemporary jazz noir theme project that I'm very, very excited about.
Say less. You had me at John Jennings. Shout out to John Jennings, one of our fellow Black comic lords.
Oh, you know what? And I have to actually do plugs here. Okay, so the 2 children's books that I'm very proud of. So
That's right.
Yes. So I have Like Lava in My Veins, which is which is written by Derek Barnes, who is so prolific.
Switch over to you. Hold on. Let me switch over to you. Sorry. There we go. Wait, almost. There we go.
There we go. Okay, so Like Lava is written by Derek Barnes, who is a best-selling, award-winning writer, and this is such a great book, and I illustrated this. This is like my first kids book, which is all about a little kid who's got anger issues, and when he gets upset, he bursts into flames, and when he goes to school and meets a teacher that gives him the right amount of time and attention, he learns to control his power, which is a metaphor for controlling your anger. This is a really, really cool book. We won a bunch of awards last year, came out really, really cool. And also, like I said, I illustrated this. And when people say that the 2 hardest things to draw are animals and kids, yes, kids are very hard to draw. All right.
Steve Cole says he has that book and that his school will be ordering it.
Yes. And this is the other one. Judge Kim. Okay. I am a co-author of this. I created this with my buddies Milo Stone, Joseph Illidge, Christopher Jordan is the illustrator. And this is all about a little girl judge, Judge Kim. And so this teaches kids and their families all about the law. So for example, so the premise is when Kim Webster goes with her mom's a judge. And one day she goes with her mom to work. And she sees how her mom judges cases. And then when Kim goes back to the neighborhood and the kids have a beef, she says, wait, don't fight. Take this up to my treehouse. Present the evidence to me, and I will solve your case. And so
I love that.
Yeah. So it's really all about teaching kids and their parents about how the law works, solving problems, from a very healthy, productive way. And this is from Simon & Schuster. So I'm very proud of these 2 books. This is Penguin Kids, Nancy Paulson. No. Simon & Schuster. And this is Nancy Paulson, Penguin Random House.
I love that.
Yeah.
All right. So I wanted to, again, let's plug what we've got going on.
Thank you, C. Cole. Appreciate it.
Again, this is DC Power coming out January 30th.
Oh, hey, can I also plug the thing about the DC Power, which is also cool, like you mentioned before, that there is a tie-in. So there's a nice little Easter egg that ties into that's going to be in the Crispus Allen short story that's in the DC Power anthology that is connected to the Red Hood and the Hill series.
All right. Everyone look out for it. Jamila C. on the way out. $5 super chat money. She says, thank you for all the info. Appreciate all the shared knowledge. Stay blessed. And for you, we give you an extra super chat video. Thank you.
Let's go!
All right. Well, thank you very much for your time, Shawn. We truly, truly appreciate you. We appreciate you spending time with us, sharing your knowledge, as Jamila said. When we do these, we consider the people that we interview now part of the BCL family. So we're hoping that you could look into the camera and say your name and say, I'm a Black comic lord. Hold on one second. Let me pull you out here by yourself. There you go.
Okay. Hey, everybody. This is Shawn Martinbrough, and I am a Black comic lord.
You said that with such authority. I mean, that was good.
Listen, like I said, I'm barely keeping myself up, man. I'm fighting this cold.
And I also appreciate you coming out here, despite the fact that you're not feeling all that well.
Cool, man.
So,
thank you for having me, man. Thank you so much.
It's a true pleasure. Anytime. So thank you all for joining us. Go check out DC Power. Go check out Red Hood coming out, and check out his past works as well. I mean, Shawn Martinbrough is a legend in the game. We're blessed to truly even have someone of his stature out here. Phenomenal talent. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Until next time.